This is me, Alesh, with my good friend and guest, Jay. Will be talking to us today about earning trust, how important it is, how to get better at it. And also, we're gonna, and let me put it right in here, we're gonna answer any of your questions, within reason, that you're gonna put in the chat for us on whatever platform you are watching us. So you see, we're going to have a chat window in here. All the questions will be displayed here. And it will be also for us the prompt that you are alive and with us. So right now, you can put in the chat if you are with us. Where are you joining us from? We are hoping for multicultural and numerous audience. And before we get warmed up and you will provide your own questions, I will hand it over to Jay. Ask him, Jay, what do you do? What makes you an expert in this? I know you for a while, so I actually know what your expertise is, but the people watching us don't. So, what makes you an expert on earning trust?
Alex, first of all, just want to thank you for inviting me to the show. Hello, everybody. It's a really pleasure to be here, Alex, and I just want to have a blast with you for an hour. I don't know if I'm an expert, Alish, but I would say I'm a student of this subject. I was introduced this in a serious way while I was working for Amazon, because earn trust is a big thing. Since then, my passion and my background has been in sales and also management and leadership. And I think fundamental to all of those, where you're leading people or you selling a product or service to organization, trust is a foundation to all of this. So because of that, I then been doing a lot of reflecting on me, what's working, what doesn't work in the field, but as well as following people that have done research and studies in the subject. So I'm by no means an academic or anything like that, but I'm a student and a practitioner of this subject. So I hope to add some value to everybody on the call today. That's it. Thank you, Alish.
I'm very sure you will, Jay. But for those of you who didn't see Jay's, fearsome profile on LinkedIn, you absolutely should. Could you sum up for us, Jay? You humbly said you're a student of it. What do you do for a living? I've seen the hashtags customer acquisition and stuff like that. What do you do that made you practice so much?
Yeah, so I have a responsibility, I guess. So my role is advising chief revenue officers or sales leaders on how to get most from their people. So that we're building their capability and making sure that we can hit those sales and commercials outcome. So when you're in a position of giving advice, you got to make sure that the advice you're giving actually works, because people are going to invest time and money into that. So that kind of fear, if you like, Alish, really got me to really think about actually how does this whole thing work? Because you know the sales is my background. So let me tell you the seriousness of the sales, right? Because more and more the what people sell is becoming commoditized. Everything looks and sounds the same, Alice, right? It's very difficult to differentiate between one product versus the other. So the real differentiation comes from the salespeople that are in front of the customers. But everyone sounds pretty much the same. How do you really differentiate? And that's where I really got into the subject of, well, how does customer make decisions? What influences those decisions? And core of that is people buy from people they trust, but they definitely won't buy from people they don't trust, right? So now I'm not talking about the basic of when someone used to sell car salesman kind of thing to, I'm talking about the enterprise sales. And here I'll look at psychology, I'll look at biases. Then how do you systematically position things in a way that cultivates trust fast? Because when we think of trust, Alex, right, we're talking about emotions, and we think about getting people to trust through, like, it's just a long thing. But in sales you don't have that. You don't have that luxury. When you're gonna go and talk to someone who doesn't know you, how do you build that trust? When there are a lot of options, how do you make that they choose you? it is that the obsession of this topic is where I go into the subject of earning trust, Alish. So that's a bit of a background, everyone. I started to be like too emotional about this, but that's where I come from. I see myself as a practitioner, Alish, more than as someone who's done a research and really into the topic of academia.
Sounds good to me, Jay. No, and we're gonna get deeper into that in just a minute. I wanted to kind of explain to whoever may not be, from Amazon, why we are calling this earn trust. So Amazon has this list of what we call leadership principles, and these are guidelines, or let's say tiebreakers, when it comes to tough decisions that we need to make. And I find those very valuable also for our life outside the job, and I think they are very valuable in whichever line of business you are. And I know, Jay, you are very familiar with those, so I use this as a vehicle to actually talk about what this means. So when it comes to earning trust, it can be broken down into several pieces. And what is important, of course, there is integrity and bunch of other behaviors that Jay will talk about a little bit. And he's also going to uncover his own kind of, I was going to say secret formula, but it's not going to be a secret, right? So that's why we are talking about earning trust. But Jay is an expert, and Jay, I don't care how you're gonna sell it, if it's academia or not, in the techniques of customer acquisition, and also in terms of mentoring the people you work with to be better at that. So Jay, I'm gonna go right into this. I wanted to know. I was of course trying to kind of frame it as broadly as I can. So it's like how to earn trust of customers and stakeholders, and people in general. And I wanted to ask you this: uh, Are the same principles when it comes to enrolling people, when it comes to earning trust, are the same principles to be applied in all environments, or would it be different in professional environment versus, let's say, asking someone for a date and trying to earn their trust? Is it what is the same and what is different?
Yeah. So at a foundational level, Alish, I always think of this a bit like a gym, right? When people say, I want to get fit, the formula is pretty straightforward, right? You sleep well, you eat healthy, and you do some exercise, and, you're going to be fine. But actually doing it is pretty hard. And same way I look at trust, which is, you got to listen, whether that's going to be in a relationship with someone, yeah, or you with the client, or you with the stakeholders, with your colleague. Listening, as much as it sounds basic, and I'll give you some examples of this, is fundamental. Because when people, it's a feeling as well, not just listening for the sake of just hearing the words, but actually deeply listening to what the other person is saying or not saying, and really understanding it from their perspective. The second thing I think is important is the way in which you communicate. Okay, so and like the relationship thing that you do, right? Your action sometimes speaks louder than words. If my I can't think of a good example right now, Lish, but like for example, if I'm cooking at home, so I don't know why this is the first thing that comes to my mind, but this is the one I break the trust a lot. I'm good at cooking, but the mess I leave, it frustrates my wife deeply, right? So that's one of the ways we don't earn this trust. But I think the way you communicate, the actions, the things that you said you will do, and what you actually do is important. It doesn't matter what the context is, Alish. Where it can be different is, and if you want to take it to another level, because when you're working for global organizations, when you've got different cultures in play, I think they're a little sensitive to what's important and what creates trust. But when you're in sales, when you're trying to be very intentional about creating trust, then you need some systems and processes on how you're going to do that. Okay. And I'll give you some examples to illustrate this. But the key things that I want everyone to take away from is that trust is, first of all, for me, is an emotional thing. It's not a logical thing. You're trying to, if you do A, B, and C and D, you equal to trust. Although there have been formulas that the pundits have actually recommended, and that is basically, we trust people who are credible, who are reliable, who are consistency, have some level of integrity. If you do all of those things, then you're going to be a trustworthy person, which is true. But I think I come from a position of, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, and secondly, trust is hugely subjective. And that's what I really want you to remember. Because how you see trust, Alish, and how I see trust will be very different. And I'll look at it as a frame. I don't know if you can see my frame, right? I have some props, team, because I think, you know, you might not remember everything we talked about in this conversation, but there are a few things, the prop that I show you, that will help you to remember the conversation that we have. Because um, how you frame things really makes a difference on when you're trying to engage with trust. I'll give you a personal example, Alish, is when I was trying to create trust with my daughter, the thing that she asked me was, could I be on TikTok? This is one of those scariest things, as for a parent, when your young one wants to be on TikTok, right? The natural thing for me to do is to kind of go into saying, right, actually, you can't use a TikTok. But I can't do that because this is my daughter, and therefore I need to really understand how she's looking at things and why she's wanting to use TikTok, and then talk about it from that perspective. So, this conversation happened in the car. Then I kind of pulled over. Then I looked at her and I said, Ria, why do you why does this conversation come? Tell me the context of this. And we spent half an hour talking about the pros and cons of TikTok, why she wanted to use the TikTok. Essentially, it comes down to being in front of the friends circle, right? To be able to be friends. So we looked at those things, and then I gave her some advice, which I said, look, if you want to participate in those videos, but just remember, whatever you put on the internet is going to be there for life. So if you're okay to do that, then you can do that. But are you sure that's what you want to do? She goes, no, I don't want to do that. Then we ended up in saying, look, actually, we will then, you can be a camera person, and then you can still be involved in that. So I guess what I'm saying in this story is, you have to look at it from other person's perspective before you can give those kind of advice. And those little things on how you make them feel, stopping the car, giving them the full attention, is really what makes trust possible. It's a long-winded way of answering the question, Alish, but I hope that made sense.
So I mean, I hope it does, and I try to practice the listening here. At the same time, I mean, you know how it is, right? TikTok times. So I am really, really eager to get some quick tips out of you as well. So what I'd like to hear is, if I understand it right, is you're trying to practice the empathy with the client. Um, but I I'm assuming you as an expert, you learned a way to kind of shorten the feedback loop and do this faster than the ordinary guy like me.
Yeah, so I think if you're looking at commercial setting, Alish, I mean, you're looking at
Hmm.
sales, for example, and you want to establish trust, the first thing is true. You got to be credible, in your space, right? So especially in B2B enterprise selling, you have to know the industry that you're working in. You cannot get away with, I'm a salesperson, but I'll sell it to retail, financial services manufacturers, because the people in those companies will not buy that anymore. So you got to take the time to understand what's going on in the industries, what are the lingos that the people use. Yeah. The second thing is a good salesperson should also understand market awareness. What are the competitions and all the different things that contributes to the buying, and where do you place your position in the marketplace, as well as understanding everything about what you're selling. Now, this is about learning and building up your knowledge base so that when you're in front of the client, um, you come across as credible. But that is not enough, Alice, right? Because a minute then you're having those conversation, your physiology, the way you communicate matters a lot. And that's why the empathy is important. And deeply listen to what the customer is trying to say without you wanting to sell something to them. Why are they looking for the product in the first place? You know, what is the problem they are trying to solve, or what is the opportunity they think they can accelerate by buying the product or services that you're offering? And how you frame those questions and the dance that you have with the client and the communication is going to really add to the trust. And the third thing is, which I have also, fallen, is the intention. So when you're meeting with the customer, what is your real intent? Um, and we learn from failures more than some of the success, Alice. Right? I'll tell you one of the failures that made me reflect on this intention aspects of it is our when I was doing my startup business. I built a product, and I was emailing a few of the decision makers to say, hey, look, I've got this product. I want to get your feedback, because I was trying to get them to respond to me in LinkedIn, to have that. So I was being very creative on this. Now, I did have that intention, Alish, to have the product feedback from those people, and I did with some of the people, right? But one of the customer that I really wanted responded back saying, uh, thank you, Jay, for contacting me. Just so I'm clear, are you looking to meet with me for possible sales opportunity, or are you looking for feedback? And at that moment, I don't know what came on me. I got so excited. I went, yeah, I would love to meet about sales opportunities. And I lost my guard. And the person replied back saying, sorry, Jay, I don't want to meet with you because I thought you wanted to um, talk about the product fit. That really hurt. It hurt because my intention, much as it was there, but unconsciously, I also had a different intention, which was to have a meeting. And therefore, I lost that trust. So that scar made me realize, actually, whenever you're talking to people, be very clear and stay true to the intent. Is it you're going to do a discovery meeting to understand the customer's needs? Or is it you're doing a demo to convince them this is the best proposition for them? But as long as you're clear, your actions, your intention is clear, your actions and the behaviors and everything else will come through. And some of them will need practicing and building those skills, but it will come through. But for me, intention is critical, and be conscious of that is what I would say.
Well, Jay, that's a truckload of stuff right here, and I would like to kind of backtrack all of this because I have so many questions around each of the points you raised. So maybe you mentioned the intention. You mentioned actually that it's important, if I got it, to practice some empathy, so to understand the needs of the person you talk to. And the first part you mentioned is knowing the industry, knowing what are the ropes in the industry. Um, can we start from the last one? So the intention and the example you mentioned. I realize I have probably so much to learn because I'm like, mm,
Uh,
it was what you did was right, right? I mean, that we all know you're a salesperson. At the end of all of this, there is a sale, and isn't that maybe I don't understand that because the intention is maybe I want to serve the client, but I also want to make a sale, right? What's wrong with that? What did I miss?
Nothing wrong with that, but the reason that I gave to get a meeting
Hmm.
wasn't right. It wasn't the right integrity, Alish. Because I've misled that from the client perspective, right? So if you take me out as a salesperson, then
Hmm.
a buyer's point of view, it's like, okay, someone just email me. So I got his attention. So I want to discuss the product fit, and there's a story behind it. So I got the attention. He's like, okay. So he might have gone, oh, actually, you know what? Maybe I do want to help this person because it's startup. Because I might have a biases towards startup, right? And there was a moment of trust. I would have felt, but he was smart in the way he asked the question. Maybe he wanted to prepare, and that's kind of where it didn't go well in that instance, Alice, right? And I think that's. But I also rushed the sale, right? I should know better because the product feedback would have been perfect for me. But in that moment, I would have had the opportunity to create, would have showcased my knowledge base and my capability without really kind of pushing that whole thing on the person. And then that would have wanted him to come and talk to me. So I didn't do that. So those are like schoolboy errors, but in sales, scars are the experiences, and those are the things that really teach you. And I think that's the same with the earning trust as well, Alice. Right? I mean, the mistakes that we make is where we learn. And on that topic, I would highly put self awareness and learning on top of the agenda, Alice, as well, right? Because that's where you're going to start becoming a better leader to earn trust of your people, because you're not going to have this perfect blueprint manual that you're going to be like, okay, must listen, page 405 and this and that. You will learn some for sure, but the actions that you take, say you're to deliver a bad message, how did you deliver that bad message to people, you know and did it work, did it not work, what people liked about it? Taking the time to reflect and understanding yourself is priceless, Alish. I think that's really the first before you can do empathy, right? Because even when you do communication, because communication, you got to flex. You can't have a one way of communicating with people because people are different. Some people like, I can tell you when I used to work with my sales VP, right? His mantra was be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. And I was completely opposite of that, right? I like the interaction. The human thing is quite important to me. So I had to modify my behavior because he was in the positions of influence and I wasn't, right? So I had to flex to kind of get to the level. Of course, over time you understand each other and you understand the motivation, the intention, and the trust and relationship goes well. But initially people judge, right? People make decisions on a snap, just by looking at the way you talk, the way you look, just the way humans are. So when you want to intentionally influence those, you got to be smart about that.
My God, I mean, you opening more boxes here for me. So let me park that one for now, because I'm having this let's say I wouldn't say inside it, that's too fashionable, but I'm just, what's
But
going through my head is Jay is telling me that trying to earn trust fast or trying to go quickly through that's actually self-sabotaging approach. So would you be suggesting to go slowly and make peace with the fact that it
mm,
just takes time, it takes investment, or
depends. So
hmm,
when long term, yes, it does. Trust takes time because you got to be credible, you got to be reliable, you got to be consistent, and then people have to have a number of interactions to go. Actually, yeah, this person can deliver what they say they will deliver. But at the same time, when you're trying to get customer acquisition, when you're trying to get a meeting with someone, or there you don't have a luxury, Alish, but you still have to entrust because if they don't have some level of trust, they're not going to be able to want to meet with you. Why would they want to meet with you? So for there, I look at things like biases, and I remember, and then biases. There's, if you can Google, there are over 100 of biases, but I have my favorite ones because human. Remember, I told you the frame thing, right? So we look at things. So I look at the buyer, and I put myself in their position, and I go, okay, what can I say or do that will trigger the trust response? Um, so that you're going to be very creative, Alish, to get those meetings to establish those trust. Now, the example I gave you is the one that didn't work, but actually, there are 4 or 5 that did work. I did have those meetings with the people. We did have those product fit discussions, and one of them did end up being one of the clients. So it's not to say it doesn't work, but sometimes it doesn't, and it teaches you things. Is what I would say, Alice. Yeah.
Got it. So let me kind of stay with that for a bit. You mentioned that the opening's important, first impressions, biases, as I understand, they play into that, right? If you misjudge the person, you can just lose the trust with your first sentence, or not a joke that falls flat. So how do
And
you?
can I
Sorry,
give
go
you?
ahead.
So I remember when I was working at O2, and I saw a proposal for Nando's, and I loved what the bid team did, Alice, right? Because they created a proposal with all Nando's branding. Nando's is like a chicken restaurant for people in the audience who are not familiar with it, and they used all the colors, the lingos, and everything else, and they made the proposal very Nando's. Now look at that, right? When Nando's is looking to buy, and you get a proposal from company A, that's like, look at me, how wonderful I am. It's all about my color, my theme, and all about me, me, me. Versus when you get a proposal where the vendor is going to so much effort to understand your own branding, the language and everything else, and put something forward that's credible. Who are you going to choose, Alish? The one that's all about them, or the one that puts customer first? So that is a real example where they actually made a huge difference, and that's what professional salespeople do. They look at creative ways to do this. And why I'm saying that to do with biases, because people like familiarity biases, Alice, right? When we're familiar with something, we feel a little bit of more ease and a little bit more trust. When we are not familiar with something, our guards go up and we become more conscious in the way we make decisions. So, so that's familiarity, and then there's status quo, and there's a couple of other things you can do to be able to break that. Now, that you got to be very conscious in how you're approaching that individual within a company to make those things happen. I hope that's useful, Alish.
It is, but I'm going to hold you to something more tangible than that. So you mentioned first impression, right?
Yeah.
So you're showing up on a call, you don't know, or you did your research. You mentioned that the first part is doing some research. So does this entail, let's say, knowing if your potential client has or has not a dress code in the company? So you dress the part. Is it choosing, the environment in case it's a video call? So I see you have library in there. Um, would you even change your body language to begin with? Suppose you're meeting someone who you don't really know. How do you prepare, or how do you quickly recognize what how to adjust as it's happening, with a person you didn't know before?
Yeah, I think preparation is key, Alish. I mean, I remember um, one of the meetings that I had was, I used to be very formal, before Amazon time, by the way. And I will approach the client, potential client, and they were in the restaurants business. So I went with my suited, booted, very formal. And the first thing that the sales VP said was, Jay, I think people are a bit nervous because we don't really wear suits here. So immediately I was like, oh my gosh. So there was a lack of trust. No one knows me in the company. I literally just kind of gone to the reception, walked with the sales, and that's the first thing the sales VP actually says. And it's quite natural, but it's a human thing to do. But what I should have done is, I should have gone before. I should have looked at the homepage, looked at the career page, see how the people are dressed, look on the YouTube, have they done any videos, how the executives have dressed up. Some of those things would have given me a clue. And at least I should have asked, look, I'm coming here for the first time. I want to be inclusive. I'm thinking of whether would that be appropriate in your culture, and that would have given me some hint. But in that particular scenario, I recovered because of the knowledge base I had of the industry and some of the conversation. So it wasn't a derailer. But I was also fortunate for the sales VP to say that up front, for me to then respond and then work on building my trust through my engagement as opposed to ignoring it. Yeah. So equally, when you're having this kind of interviews or various things, it does, people do judge, right? I know of being authentic is the cool thing to do, and I think people should be authentic, but I think authentic doesn't replace modifying behavior, because we could be authentic and doing something bad, right? It's not okay. I'm being authentic, but I don't know how to do something. I'm not competent. That's my job. Not okay, right? So I think, Alish, you do have to look at all those things into consideration.
That's actually pretty cool, segue to go back to your first point, which was, and you brought in again the research. I'm wondering, it can I overdo it? And bear with me. Here's what I'm thinking, right? Suppose, we might have some people managers watching us. You mentioned the TikTok and your daughter. So suppose you did the research, right? And you try to use the right language. You try to use, their acronyms or whatever trendy language. Suppose a people manager who's 50 years old and he's trying to kind of enroll a 21-year-old. It If you go too much into detail, it might turn out, counterproductive. It might go horribly flat. I say, ATS instead of TSA or something. How deep do you go with this kind of mimicking approach?
Well, yeah, you're right. It's not necessarily mimicking in the sense you got to know your stuff, is what I'm saying. Yeah, so you can't talk about TikTok if you don't know, if you haven't used the TikTok in the first place. Then you're coming across false. I'm not saying be false. That's wrong. I'm just saying know your stuff is what I'm saying, right? So you can't pretend to be something you're not either. But equally, that is not an excuse for you to not to learn anything either. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So when you're going for a when you're trying to sell into something, the industry itself is going vertical. The customers only want to talk to people that understand their business. Now, if you got accounts that select to multiple sectors, you're going to find it hard. Yeah, the person that comes, and I give an example of that. One of the business that I won in the payment industry is, I was a startup, uh, no proven track record necessarily, and they buy from the big boys, the McKenzie and all that kind of stuff. Where I was able to build trust is I researched and studied and spoke to a lot of people about payment industry and what it does, more than the people that would have worked in the first place. Yeah. Now, no, I say that they know more, but they appreciated the fact that I did that level of research and I contextualized what I was trying to do for them in their world. Whereas I know my competitions wouldn't have done that. They would have gone, we're already a big brand. This is what we do. Buy our product. Yeah. And that's what differentiates it. But the message, you're right 100%, Alice. You do not want to be false. But my what I'm saying is that is not an excuse for you to not to do the learning either. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think, to go into a specific example, right? Would you suppose you did your research, you know the industry, would you actively kind of try to hook them? Would you say, oh, by the way, TPSMD, which means something for you, kind of winking on them, I know my stuff? Or would you just be genuine and passively, when they ask a question, you would just say, yeah, I know, or I know your numbers? Is it about understanding them, or is it about showing off a little so you kind of, you know, display that you know?
I think it's a bit of both, but how you deliver it is what I would is completely different, Alice. Right? So you have to be humble in your approach. So the way I present is to say, look, I'm excited to be here for the discovery sessions. Me and the team have been spending 2 days trying to understand your industry and the challenges that you are facing. I know we might have got some of this wrong, but we did our best. But we want to just validate this with you. Are we on the right track? I'm completely fine if you think this is all wrong, and what you are trying to do is completely different. But we want to just do some initial work and preparation for our meeting. Now, how does the customer feels when they hear that? They go, okay, these guys are putting some time in. They're caring about what I'm doing. But versus, hey, look at me. Did you know what happened with X, Y, and Z? And you don't want to be a show off. That's not the intent. You got to have a level of integrity as well, because those things at the beginning where you kind of the facade that will die. That's what I mean. You can't have like little knowledge and then pretend you know everything. You can't do that because you'll get found out anyway. Yeah. So the second aspect of what I was talking about, Alish, is how do you communicate that, right? Which is not easy. Yeah. So knowing your stuff gives you level of confidence. Yeah. That's what it does. It gives you level of confidence. And when you're having those interactions, they can go, okay, this person has some understanding of my company. They have a lot of understanding about what they do, and they definitely understand how they could help me. Because if you can't articulate that in that way, then the chance of winning the deal is zero almost, Alice, right? So, but all that dance is basically showing credibility. Yeah. Then you kind of give them proof points of where you have done well. So kind of reducing the risk a little bit, and then with the consistency of how you work throughout the meeting. But sales is not a one meeting and you get this check and it's all done. It's a series of meetings, a series of stages, and how you conduct yourself throughout matters, because you might do a fantastic job of the initial discovery meeting, then come to negotiation, you now acting differently, then that kills the trust. Yeah, trust is very hard to earn in the sense of all the things that you have to do, but it very quickly can lose it. And one way I've seen people lose trust is, I think I mentioned a few of them, is anchoring, right? This concept of anchoring. You say a price to the customer in the beginning. Let's say this product costs 10,000, and all the customer remembers is 10,000. And when they come, they were working with you, and then you come to the bit where you got to do this negotiation, you come out with 50K. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, now I don't trust that you have my best interest at heart. Why did that happen? Because that's why in sales it's dangerous to give pricing without establishing the value that you're giving to the customer. Because at the beginning of the stages, you might be talking about apples, and apples cost £10,000. Then throughout the conversation, they added pears and they added bananas, and that's why it got to 50. But the anchoring of price, the customer doesn't remember the bananas and things they added. They're kind of going straight to the apples and go, well, you said 10, now you got 50, and it's unconsciously they make that decision. So it's important, Alish, to kind of look at it from that perspective as well.
First of all, Jay, I need to look, across the channel again, because if apples cost £10,000 over there now, it's really going downhill. But I think this is actually it. I get it. So let me see. I just realized it really ties into the Amazon definition, and I'm gonna keep trying, that to kind of reframe it to make sure that I got it uh, till I do, because that's our time here. So what you're saying in the integrity, if I understand it, is if I'm going to enroll someone, a client, a stakeholder, anyone, what I'm trying to do is do my homework during the call, during the interaction, show, hey, I did my homework. I am willing to admit that I'm not perfect and maybe I didn't do everything right and didn't find every single thing. But basically, what I'm trying to communicate, if I get it right, is, hey, here I am willing to dedicate my time and effort into understanding you. And that sets me up for the future interactions. Is
So
is that is that right?
yes and no, because I think one of the thing, what I said before, Alish, is trust is also very subjective, right? Is
Mhm.
and different people value different things. So that is my style, and if someone's in front, I got to be able to have the emotional intelligence to kind of gauge the person in front of me and to position it as such. But if they're very busy, then we might go straight into the meeting because okay, he might, and people who are very direct will go, okay, Jay, what can you do for us? Boom. They're not going to slow it down and trying to establish a credibility, because how you say and what you say is determined by, led by the buyer, and then the environment that you're in, right? So never have a one style. We have a preferred style, like I told you before with my VP, right? Be brief, be brilliant, be gone. That's his style. My style is very different. But if I only stay to authentic to my style and not adapt my style, then it's very difficult to connect with other person. And that's the what you talked about, Alex, the empathy, looking at from what is important to them, then modifying the communication to that individual is where you're going to build that trust. Because in the end, they're not going to, the words and those things matter, but at the end, they kind of will go, do I trust that person? It's just a feeling they will get. It's a combination of everything. Now, much as that said, you need to know your staff, but that's not the only thing that actually makes that trust decision, Alice. Right? You also have to, do what you say you will do. I'm going to send a post meeting minutes after a call. Then you need to do that. You don't do that. You send it after 10 days. Then you don't become very reliable to me. You know and so those things matters, and from a business point of view, and not because I worked at Amazon and I love Amazon. When things, look at the return policy Amazon has. I was talking to my brother-in-law. He bought this phone. I won't mention the company's name, but this headset accessory. He went to the manufacturers, who made that, and the global brand, the innovative product and everything else. And what they did was they send him to the store. Some smart people then look at it, and then they will make you do some few other things. They made it very difficult for him. He then go, actually, I bought this from Amazon. Rang up Amazon. This doesn't work. They're like, sure, send it back. We refund you the money. Done. Now the both brand, the global, they both have the reputation of product innovation and all that kind of stuff, but they miss out on the small process of the exchange where they lose trust. So now none of us will go to that top manufacturer for returns because we know Amazon will do it well. Now I'm not just saying that because Amazon, I'm just saying that because everybody can understand this example. So there are many different things that goes into that trust, Alice. Like I said, it's your integrity. If you're a manager, the people wanting to know, are you someone that's going to get their back, or are you someone who's going to just throw them under the bus at any opportunity? Are you the sort of manager that puts other people first before your self-interest? you know those kind of actions also adds to the trust as well. So when you talking about the sense of sales, the buyer needs to know you are someone that actually going to help them move forward with their goals, not to sell them anything. No professional salespeople, Alish, um, the top ones, do not think like that. They're actually an advisor to the client, and they have confidence that their product will solve their problem. The reason why you got to be smart about it, but there are three other people can equal do the same thing as what you're saying you could do, and that's when you have to really up the game to show differentiation. And the interaction you have with the individuals are massive in terms of massive weighing factor for the customer to buy. Does that give I feel like I covered a lot in there, Alish, and I hope
No,
that
I mean it's really cool, and we're gonna go deeper into a couple of those. By the way, you said you are not gonna praise Amazon in here, but I'm totally looping in the director of customer services, to the post and say, hey, they're gonna be over the moon.
uh,
Anyway,
well, there are a couple of things it stays with me for life, the things that Amazon does well, because what I love about Amazon is, in terms of talking about the trust, they don't just talk about it, they give you real stories and examples that stay with you, right? There are two things that stayed with me. Is one, when they talk about trust, is they don't, I can't remember the exact wording, but it says, we don't say our body odor smells of perfume. Yeah. So and what that really means is, you speak candidly. When someone is not doing a great job, you be candid about it, right? You don't go around saying, well, I think you're doing okay job, but maybe you're doing this. That doesn't give that trust, which I think is wonderful. The second thing is a concept of I got my children's piggy bank concept, right? Because they kind of said trust is a bit like a piggy bank. The more the positive things that you do, you earn it. You earn those trust. But every time with the actions that you do that doesn't contribute to the trustworthiness, you take money out. If you spend it too much, you're left with no trust with your people, right? The more you have, when you make mistakes, people forgive you because they know the trust that you have built up. I think those are still valid in the context of leadership, and I think that's what Amazon really focused on, about leaders behaving in a way that creates trust for their people. So we talked about from Amazon from a leadership point of view, Alish. I talked about from a customer point of view, and I give some personal examples as well. But I think you know the thing that we haven't spoken about is also when you're working for global organization, cultural also matters, right? Your ability matters. We talked about the fact that the empathy matters and your integrity matters too. And depending on where you are, you value one thing more than the other. So my experience has been, if you're in a European culture, you can't generalize, but just for the sake of this discussion and debate, I'm generalizing. The competence matters more. Can you do the job or not? Whereas from a background from an Asian country, I'm from Sri Lanka originally, right? We value the relationship, the relationship aspects of it far more than the competence. So, and then what I said to you before is we all look through the frames, and whenever you're talking to people and from different cultures, you got to make extra effort to understand where they come from. And if you're a manager, you leading a multicultural team, you got to understand more about them. How did they grow up, and what was their education like, what was it like living in the country. Make that effort to really understand the individual, because their life experiences shapes how they make decisions and how they look at things, which might be completely different to how you look at things and how you brought up. Yeah, so that is for me is super important, Alish.
So that's very, very interesting here. So I'm thinking, would you? I understand you would do like the background studies as you suggested, also understanding the cultural backgrounds.
For the
Um,
people you're working with, when you will do it when it's very important.
mhm.
So I guess I'm looking at it and talking about from a frame of mind, Alish, when it's critical. Yeah. So if I'm giving a feedback to one of my direct reports that it didn't go well and I had to give feedback, the way the best practices might be, well, you give them the feedback, right? Direct, concise, and observe the behaviors and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't create trust, Alish, right? Because you got to create that psychological safety for people to even have those conversations. And how could you make the environment psychologically safe for the individual if you don't understand where they're coming from? People don't come to work to make mistakes, Alice, right? They want to do a good job, but the way they're approaching the work is probably not the productive way. And then you might have different solutions, but you got to look at it from their perspective, is why they're behaving like that, and then trying to find areas of commonality. So let me give you an example. Is um, say I'm a sales manager. One of my reps is underperforming. So what do you do? I saw the audience. Pause on that for a second. You're the manager, and one of your rep is underperforming. What do you do? Right. So the easiest thing to do is tell them they're underperforming, get on with it, or they get fired. That drives certain kind of behavior. But if you genuinely believe that actually with your help they can actually do well, you got to understand what is causing that behavior in the first place. It might be, Alice, they might have family issues that's causing it, or it might be the fact that they have a different ambition to what they're doing right now. But if you understand the real motivation, and people only tell you the real motivation, they feel like you are a good intent. Your intention, it is to help them, not to fire them or pick holes in them or putting them down. And that conversation is very different. So once you know that, you can then tailor how to deliver those messages. For example, they might say, well, actually, Jay, I don't want to be a salesperson, I want to be a system engineer instead. I want to know the technical stuff of it. Okay, then you can have a productive conversation to say, okay, so this is the role, and then you can go into the coaching mode of, how you can get them to where they want to get to, and have plans in place to backfill them when they eventually do decide to leave. But it gives you options once people start talking. But people only start talking if they feel like they can trust you, and that trust comes from the intention, the way you communicate, and the actions that you take, right? I think in my head, I call this the ISA framework. So in UK, we have a bank account called ISA. I think the instant saving account, and it helps me to remember it. So the I stands for intention, S stands for the style of communication, A stands for actions. And I kind of gauge myself: is my intention right? Is my communication appropriate? And is my action that I'm doing is in line with what I want to actually do?
Hmm. I'm thinking here. It would probably fit under the A, the action part. The Because there's something you said earlier about uh, the product, like what you're selling, right? If you're a people manager, product, it's probably you and your skills and your management, let's say, services or leadership. But if you're selling a product or a service of a company you represent, I was always kind of under the impression, like the Wolf of Wall Street, the idea that the best salesman, the best salesman is the one who can sell anything to anybody. I can sell you your own shoes or something.
I see the Eskimo is the one that kind of. It's
Would you,
not.
would you say that like a top expert in your field would not commit to sell a product or a service they don't believe in?
I agree. They wouldn't. They wouldn't. They wouldn't be able to do it well, Alish, because they wouldn't be able to do it because the body language will leak, uh, and they wouldn't be able to do with conviction when you're presenting the thing. Just they wouldn't be able to do it. They won't be successful. They might do it, but they won't be successful. If you want to be the top 1% in sales, those people are not necessarily the talkers, Alish. I think that's the perception people have, right? If it's sales, you go smooth talker. No, I think for me, the best salespeople are the people that listens, truly puts the interest of the customers first and foremost, and understands deeply. Because when you do that, you do all the right things. Because then you listen, then you're curious about the problems. So when you go deeper into the problems of, okay, what's the problem, what and what are the implications of those problems, and how much is costing them, because you do it because you care. Yeah, like my daughter, when she comes to me with a problem, I care enough. I can't just be like superficial about it. I need to go deeper to understand why and what and how. That comes naturally. So when you care enough, you do the listening. You do all the little things that needs to happen. Then what happens is when you sell in the product, because selling doesn't end there, Alice, right? Because once you sold a product, people have to use it. Because if they don't use it, they're not going to buy from you again. Because in today's world, you can't depend on just selling one product and be done with. You want to sell more stuff to the customers you have sold to, but they're only going to buy more from you if it delivered what it said it's going to do in the first place. So the customer experience matters hugely. So you cannot be a salesperson that goes, okay, I sold this to you, got the check, goodbye. No, you still have to follow up after a few weeks to say, hey, I just want to let you know the delivery is on schedule. You're going to get that in 5 days. I'm handing over to my good friend here, John. He works in customer services. From now onwards, he's going to take care of you. Um, and just want to, a good salesman also then will ask for referral, but that's another topic. But you then continue to make sure and you stay light touch with the customer, even though somebody else is taking care of the account, you still stay in touch because the right thing to do. But a smart salesperson also knows that that buyer will probably move to another job at some point, or and if they had a poor experience, if the product they bought didn't do what it said, they're going to blame you, the person who sold it. They're never going to buy from you again. They're not going to trust you again. Yeah. So to earn those trust, you got to make sure the things are still working, and the promise that you made, you're still able to deliver. Sometimes it doesn't always go well like that, let's try. Sometimes delivery schedule is all messed up, and that's when you really have to be transparent, and your value comes in and say, hey, look, I intended to get it on this date, but because of X, Y, and Z, it didn't work. But let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. But being that proactively, giving the assurance to the customer, I'm on the case, right? What you don't want is customers finding out that it's going to get delivered and they feel like they're on their own, then you kill trust. So being a top salesperson requires a lot of the actions we talked about, these are all the different actions, Alish, that's required to sustain that trust, right? So now we're talking about sustained trust. So we initially we talked about how do you get quick trust to get introduction to have the meeting, but to sustain that trust, you've got to be reliable, you've got to be consistency, and you've got to have some level of integrity values that the other person can also values. Sorry, Alice, I got to be a little bit more passionate on this one.
Well, I can see the integrity right there. You care.
Salespeople are the old cliche, the model, the frame that we have, right? It's not the way. It's not the way anymore. And like I said, you gonna the sales will now become more almost like a scientist too, right? Or people psychologist into the understanding really how people make decisions, how could they best position themselves so that the buyers can make the right, the influencers, the buyers can make the right choice, which is them, So they are operating at a very different level. So, just to kind of summarize, Alex, we talked about the foundation. We said listening, speaking, respecting others and all that kind of stuff at a foundation level. But when you go to more critical, when the risk is so high, that's when the preparations and everything else comes in. When the risk is low, then you can get away with it to some degree. But that's where I will, think about how much time I want to, you want to invest. If it's my DR, I would want to understand the background because I care and I treat them as I look at my DRs when I talk to them as my children, you know, like even they're older or whatever, it doesn't make a difference. It's a mindset thing that I care and I want to do the right thing to earn their trust. And I don't, that's the focus.
So, there's I wanted to say, because we have about 15 minutes left with Jay. If you have any questions for Jay, drop them in a chat, drop them in comments. We pick them up. If not, I have plenty of questions for another 3 hours, Jay. But I'm gonna limit it to a few, because
Sure.
you got me thinking, and so I'm grateful already for that. We are often talking about trust as an investment, right? So you use your prop and the piggy bank. And what what's my question here is, how, if it's an investment, it only seems to make sense to invest when you're gonna get some dividend, right? When you're gonna get something back. What about people or professions? And maybe you had reports who had to deal with that. Maybe you had a client like that. What about situations when you don't have this runway to work with one customer? An example would be, recently I've been you know I had a layover in Munich airport, and I was there, buying coffee, horrible customer service. And then I was thinking, poor person there, the person there, it's not like the corner cafe when you have the same people coming back, knowing you. No, it doesn't matter, whatever you do, however you behave, it's going to be different people rushing in every day. Why would that person be nice to me, getting me coffee? There's nothing in it for them. What the same for some managers in Amazon, right? We hire a lot of seasonal support, and of course you need to work with those people, motivate and manage them. But some of those managers can say to themselves, come on, after the season is over, he's going to be gone. Why do I invest into this relationship? What would you say to those people?
So I think the multiple things that you covered, Alex, I think they're quite an important one as well. So I think this is one of the reasons why Amazon spends a lot of time hiring the right people, because you want to hire people into jobs that they actually want to do. Yeah. So, if the person is serving the coffee, if they don't want to do the coffee, or they don't want to serve people, they're not the right people for that job. Everyone at home knows. I got my DIY tool here. I'm a terrible DIY person. As soon as I pick this up, there'll be panic at home. They're like, Jay, put that down and walk away slowly. Yeah. So hiring is important. I think that's the first thing. The second thing, Alish, is training. Amazon spends a lot of time investing and having all the stories and onboarding and everything else, because people need to be reminded, and taught what goes into earning those trusts, but doing in a way that's meaningful to them. And that's why you get the consistent experience from some organization. Doesn't matter who you talk to, you still. I'll give an Apple for example, right? Doesn't matter where you go in the world in Apple, they're all similar experience, right? But that's got a formula which is to do with training effectively. When you take the training out of the way and you don't give people a meaning to why they're doing their job, then they do something random. They're doing what it is because the manager hasn't taken the time to connect those to the individual, the job, and what it means. So when I was 17, or 18, working in a local store, I didn't know anything about this kind of stuff, right? But the way he got me to connect is to say, Jay, I know you're here for a season, but the skills you will learn here gonna really help you in your long run. Let me tell you about communication skill. Let me tell you about how to watch your customers. And look at that person over there, Jay. That person is lost, but he doesn't want to ask for it. Now, how would you go and approach that? He taught me some of those. I didn't know at the time, but he taught me, Jay, these are skills that you were learning. And to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, those lessons is unconsciously really contributed to who I am. Those are good managers, Alish, right? And that's why it's important leaders play the role of connecting the organization's value, and create a meaning for the people for what they care about. So if they're only there for a little while, going to go to university, do other things, but how does what they do today help them? If they can't connect to it, it's just another job. Does that help, Alish?
Well, I'm sure it makes sense for the people in those jobs. I don't know if, Munich airport can,
The,
what's the
you
job
know,
market in
let,
in
let,
the area,
look,
but
let's
yeah.
discussion on training, right? About earning trust, from a company, from the individual perspective. Um, but I think that is, if you're in the service industry, you got to care about people, right? And
Mm,
and if you're not, then you're in the wrong job. Is what I would say. Be harsh,
got it.
and that's how I judge myself, Alex. So I'm being harsh on myself.
So, I mean, let me actually switch gears a little bit because there's one burning question I have, and I really wanted to ask, but I'll put it into a little bit of a perspective. So, Jay, I know that what you were able to do when you were working with stakeholders in Amazon, you were able to accomplish something impossible for many Amazonians who were able to actually gain trust of high level Amazonians, directors, VPs, and offered them and provided support with, you know, public speaking, presentation skills, basically earning trust for themselves. And those are people who are very busy. They've seen it all, difficult to reach, and somehow they were willing, to talk to you and spend time on perfecting their craft. And I'm asking because there are many, many Amazonians who might be watching this who can't get one-on-one time with any of those people, and they would want to know some secrets in there. So, how
Uh,
did you do that?
so I think, it's very kind of you, first of all, Alice. But they are great memories, and I'm humbled by them. And I think my approach, Alice, is when I see those scores of leaders when the presentation is not where they want to be, I I kind of I do take the time to think about, okay, and I study the recording of what did they do well, what they didn't, and I tried to look at from a psychological point of view. What was their frame of mind? What were the words they were using that gave me a clue? They're like, "Oh, I'm not good with technology." Immediately, I know the insecurity is technology. Yeah. So the other might be, okay, I'm really busy with something. So I listen to for those words because the words they use gives me clues on how they think and what is going through their mind. Then I go, okay, so I understand where the sort of where the real fear factor is, what is really the heart of it, not the superficial that they didn't look at the camera and all that kind of stuff. I don't bother with those, but actually what was going through their mind. Once I understand that, I then think about, okay, I'm gonna put in 30 minutes with them. How do I get their attention in the 30 seconds that I have with them? And I also look at myself as equal to them. I don't look at them as senior. I don't look at anyone in hierarchical fashion. At that moment, I'm thinking, I need to serve, I need to help. How do I explain it in a way in 30 seconds that they would appreciate? So some of the leaders I would have gone, okay, we had a great session. I know you want to. I know you're a very competitive person. You want to give 5 point out of 5. The scores come back with 4.8. I have some suggestions on where to improve. But is this something important to you that we should have a conversation, or are you happy with where we are? Now, 9 out of 10, they will go, no, I'm interested in what you have to say, Jay. Then I'll go, okay. So first of all, what's your perspective? Can you tell me, what were your preparation like, and what did you enjoy about doing the presentation, and what you didn't enjoy about the presentation? Because it's important they talk, Alish, and because the minute they're talking, the trust is being built. Because I'm asking the right questions. I think we have to talk about the questions. The questions matter because the questions get the other person to go through their thinking, and that gives me clues about where they're emphasizing more, where the body language looks uncomfortable. Then I go, okay, so the more body language is uncomfortable on the whole tech side of it. And I go, okay, I've done the analysis. Would it be fair that actually the technologies aspects of it, if you improve on that one, do you think you can get to like from 4.6 to 4.8? Then they'll go, yeah, possibly. Okay, I know we can't change too many things, and I know you're pressured on time. But if you had to pick three things, or one thing that if you do that'll make an impact, would you choose, you know, the messaging or how you deliver virtually or the technology? Which one would you prioritize? So I'll give them choice on where they want to focus on the development. Therefore, they own it. Well, you don't want, Alish, for me to own the stuff. It's not my development; it's their development. So they go, but I'm empowering them to make those choices, but I'm also guiding them in a way that go, okay, I get it now. Okay, right. Then I'll say, okay, but to make that change from a 4.6 presenter to 5 point presenter is going to require a little bit of work. Is it important enough for you to invest the time, or you rather not? Now you hear, now you think it's a lot of work. At that point, it's very difficult. They go, no, it's important. If it is, can I share with you from a learning practice and from a psychology perspective, the key ingredients we need in order for that to be successful? And they'll go, yeah, sure. And I go, well, the best thing to do is, first of all, you got to take ownership. You got to do, then we reflect, whatever it is, right? As I say that, they look at me as a professional who understands learning, the human psychology really well, that could actually help him, right? And then I go, okay, so the next step is please email me, send me an invite when you want to have those. And I'm asking you to do this instead of me, because if it's important, you will make the time. If it's not important, you won't make the time. Because I'm going to give you all that I have to support you, but you're going to be ready to do the same. And they go, yeah, sure. Then we go into doing the actual work of getting them up to speed, which is recording, looking at recording, giving them coaching feedback. We do trial, we make baby steps and do all that kind of stuff. But setting it up front, it takes me a lot of brain power, thinking, and sequencing. I do all this. I know it sounds crazy, Alice, but I do that. But then when I'm with them, because I've done all the thinking and everything else, I trust myself to do the right thing in front of the client. But if I didn't do those preparation, Alish, then I'm not doing justice to that individual. So each person that I'm working with, I take it as my duty and care to do what is right. My self-interest of whether the stakeholders like me or not, whether they're going to give me promotion or not, it doesn't even come to my head. I don't care. If that was a junior person asked me to say, Jay, I want to improve my presentation, I'll go for the same process. My process doesn't change. When you care, you care about the outcome, you do all the things that you will need to do. Does that help, Alish? I don't know. There's a long
Well,
answer.
I'm sorry, Jay. I'm gonna be rewatching this after we're done to kind of hone my own craft there. And so basically, I have this one as the kind of final question, and I'm gonna ask you that because obviously you know your stuff, and there's a lot of people who are good, and you obviously are more than that. Uh, are you still learning new things, or is it like the same recipe, like research and more research? Is there
No,
something that you're still learning?
Alish, I feel like I know this much, and what I need to learn is like this much, because there's no one to like our fundamental, what we do, Alice, right, is we build people's capability. But to do that, people have to be motivated. Then how do you get people motivated? Then how do you even get their attention to be able to even have the motivated conversation? The minute you start lining this up, then now we're talking about cross-functional knowledge here, Alice, right? I'll look at ad marketing and ads and stuff like to get inspiration of what do they do to cut through the noise to get their people's attention. Then I talk about, okay, with learning, how do we get most retention from being in that environment? When you're giving a lot but we're only take 10% of it, how do I increase that to 15%? Why 10%? you know the other thing they talked about is then communication. Well, how do you do all of that? How do you do marketing? Then being an Amazon, creating mechanism. How do you create processes? Because having good ideas and good intentions don't work. You got to put actions and processes in place. Well, how do you do that? And then human psychology. Where I'm at the moment, I'm still obsessed over how people make decisions. How do you influence those decisions? You know, so which means you're learning a lot of broader things to better your craft. And the more you learn, the more you realize, the more you don't know. So it's a never ending, Alice. But what I find is cross functional learning helped me a lot. Versus if I were to go, I'm L&D, or I'm this, I'm sales, I'm this and that, it doesn't work. And by the way, I'll close this. I learned by learning when my daughter, when she was 3. A quick story. Um, when I went to pick her up, the nursery teacher said, Jay, you need to help her to do handwriting better. And I was like, yep, I got this because I'm a learning professional. I told my wife, I got this. And I sat down with my daughter, and then I said, look, Ria, draw this. I don't know why I had this expectation, but I actually thought she's going to like draw something great, right? And she was holding a pencil like this, right? Not like this, like this. Like doing this. And I was like, what the hell is this, right? And I was really frustrated. And at that moment, Alish, I realized I don't know anything about learning. I don't know anything about behavioral change because I don't know what I need to do to my 3-year daughter for her to do well. I don't know. So I told my boss, I don't know my job anymore. I signed up to Montessori, which is like a child learning and all that kind of stuff. I studied that for like about 6-7 months, Alish. I'm now Montessori certified. I went back to how does people learn? So I learned about all the theorists and understood all that stuff to a point. I think I'm a better father because I now know a little bit about how do you change behaviors a little bit, how do you, and all of that Alice is learned is how does other person looks at the world? How does a 3-year-old look at the world? How does a older person looks at the world? And then how do you communicate in a way that they can understand? Not because what I want to say, but it's how they understand. I think that helped me a lot, Alish, and that fundamentally changed my whole profession. That incident, it hurt me so much that I'm a work in progress, is what I would say, Alish. But anyway, I think we all are to some degree. I think the minute we know something, we become an expert at it, and that's always danger, because the world is moving too fast. The next thing about deep learning, AI, and how does that all work? And then creativity is where it is, Alish. So, I remember in LinkedIn, people used to just send those messages. People say, okay, be relevant, and that worked at one point. Oh, I read an article that you wrote on this, could I have a meeting with you. At one point that did work, but now it's gone too much and it doesn't work. So, you think of very creative ways of doing that. Anyway, Alish, once again, I've overspoke, and I really appreciate this opportunity to spend some time with you. I'm learning just by the questions you're asking me, Alish, and I'm very grateful and I'm humbled. Thank you.
So am I, Jay. I was planning to say something smart, to close this, but you already did that. So what leaves to me to say is just to thank you, and hopefully, you're going to be willing to do this again in some time because, as I said, I always have more questions.
No, I understand, Alish, and I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope there's some value from it. And Alish, pleasure to be here as always. Great to have a good conversation with a good friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.